Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Good to see you again, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to see you again, too. It's been a fun and crazy week for me. How about you?
Definitely a crazy week. I'm holding fun in reserve.
Okay,
but
that sounds
definitely
good.
a crazy week.
Well, I've been kind of doing stuff at work, which has been varied and lots of different things going on there, which is kind of some new and exciting projects are happening that I'm a part of. But in my spare time, I've also been working on some things that specifically for Jovo version 4, some plugins. But it's actually things that I've used before in other voice projects, and I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about them.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. And and it's great that you're building the stuff and contributing to Jovo. Can you talk a little bit about like what that process is?
Oh, I've been doing Jovo development for 5-6 years now on various different versions, and I'm not sure if it's from the very beginning or not. Well, Jovo is open source, so you can contribute to Jovo, and there's some guidelines on how to contribute. And the latest version of Jovo is Jovo version 4, so you can contribute that way, and you could go in and make fixes or even changes or additions to some of the core features that Jovo has, or you can choose to do them inside projects and also have them be open source. And so there was a point that I decided that I wanted to go ahead and work on some things on the side. And for Jovo version 3, I created some plugins, and I decided that, well, that could be either on my GitHub repository, or I could create an organization repository. So I created jovo-community.
Mm.
So that's kind of where I put all the different things that I'm contributing. Well, most of them, like Speech Markdown has its own, but there's it's just a place where you can go to. And I had like some validators for Jovo 3 that you could use. So there was a Sentry plugin, a time zone plugin that you could use that would work with both Google Assistant and Alexa. So those were some things. I guess check out Jovo community if you want to see what's happening. And so it's been a little while, and it's that I've added some new things.
And just to be clear, that's jovo-community.
Jovo-community.
Okay.
Yep. But it's also been fun because there have been some updates to like the time zone plugin or some other things that other people have wanted to make. And I'm like, sure, here have
it's open source
contributor access. Yeah. And and some people I even gave access so that they can just go ahead and push out new things to NPM as well. So very willing to accept people that are interested in working on these projects. I also have one for Alexa Skills Kit -community, so ask-community that had some things for Alexa Skills Kit SDK too. But so open source, a big fan of it. And this new plugin, it's a tools plugin. It's going to be a collection of things that I've used before or that I have found useful. And one of the common things that each of the 3 plugins that are currently in this tool is that they're persisting some information across sessions. And so they need to use user data storage, where Jovo has this generic mechanism where you can add something to an object called $user.data. And whatever you have configured as your provider for that persistent data store, could be DynamoDB, it could be MongoDB, it could be a number of different providers. It will just automatically save to that, whatever that's configured. So it's these plugins build on top of this user data storage layer using its conventions, and then the layer underneath that is where you've plugged in the provider, the database provider that you want to use.
Okay, so Jovo provides out of the box the user object, and then provides a number of different modules that let you determine how you best want to save that user object. And your plugins just work on the user object. So you don't care how they're saved.
Yep. It's just JSON data. And so I just save values to this location, and they automatically get stored.
Okay,
And
so
yep.
what are these plugin, or so it's one plugin with 3 modules?
Yeah, so it's one plugin with 3 tools,
Okay,
basically.
so what are the 3 tools?
So the 3 tools, and we'll talk about them, one by one. One is a shuffle array. The purpose of the shuffle array is if you've got an array of things that you want to iterate through in a random order and not repeat until you get to the end.
Oh, okay.
Then when that happens, it reshuffles, and you can keep going through. So like this would be like a list of quotes or questions, or it could be whatever you wanted to go through and just randomly shuffle through. The second one is a streak counter. It keeps track of like, have you been here today, and were you also here previously in a streak, and it will keep incrementing the streak counter until you miss a day, and then it will start back over at 1, and then just keeps going through. So that's the second one. And the third one's kind of my favorite. It's a recharge counter. The idea of the recharge counter is that you've got so many uses of something, and you can set a max value for that, and then you can use those. But you also set what the recharge time is. So if I use the first one, now I only have 2 left, and let's say it takes 15 minutes to recharge, I'll only have 2 until that 15 minutes is up.
And we saw that this sounds like it was used on Snatchword.
Yes, it was used on Snatchword, and it's interesting because it can be used on the various things. Like you have certain number of actions that you can use, and then you have to wait so much time before you can use those actions again. But it also pops up in places where you may not expect it. Like if you want to give some sort of an information prompt and you don't want to bother the person every time they come in, you can set the max count at 1 and the length of time and say, go ahead and give them this prompt to set a permission or something. And then you could just check to say, has that time expired yet? And if it has, then you could prompt them again. If not, you just skip the prompt.
Well, you don't check how much time it is, because you've got this recharge that you set for a week maybe. So you don't,
Yep.
you send them this message no more often than once a week.
Yep.
That's very clear. It's almost in some ways the exact inverse of the sequence counter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's very clever. A lot of potential uses for that.
Yeah, another place I use it is in upsells. So like there's different cases. I don't want to nag people about doing in-skill purchasing, but there's times where you want to kind of give an upsell opportunity. And so once again, you can set the counter at 1 and then figure out how frequently you want to issue an upsell. And so it's just a matter of checking the counter. All of these counters have a key associated with them, because you could use multiple counters in the same skill or action, or the same thing with the shuffle array. So that's kind of how they work. They have some things in common. They all have an ability to reset. One of the things that I was also concerned about was, well, I've got these plugins that are automatically behind the scenes writing to this user data storage. How do I do that in such a way so that it doesn't, some other user that's using it doesn't collide with the same names or whatever? And so things that are stored in the data storage is prefixed with the JC tools, that stands for Jovo Community Tools. And then the tool name, which would be recharge counter or streak counter or shuffle array. And then the key that you provide when you actually make the call. And so all those things are kind of namespaced and set away so that there won't be any collisions with other things that are stored in user storage.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds good. So how would one, I guess, install and begin to use these modules?
Okay. First of all, you want to just find that on GitHub or NPM. Just look for jovo-community-plugin-tools. And there's instructions on how to install that, whether you're using JavaScript or TypeScript. It'll show you exactly where in the app TS file that Jovo gives you. There's a place where there's an array of plugins that you'll get to new up each of your different plugins. So you'll just plug those in. And right now there's no configuration needed for the plugin itself. That could be something that we could add over time, but right now it's just these functions that are exposed. And so you'll do this $JC tools and then the name of the tool, whether it's a street counter or shuffle array or the other. So that's kind of how it works. All that's on the documentation on how to use it. I think I've got pretty good documentation on how it all works, like what methods are available and what they each do, with some code samples. And then I even give a sample of, like, behind the scenes, this is how the data is stored in the data store. Not that you need to access it or you won't want to access it directly, but you'll at least have an idea of kind of how it works.
Sure. And it's useful if you're debugging, trying to figure out why something's happening. You can see what this counter is doing over time, or why the shuffle is working the way it is. So definitely useful to have that knowledge.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and we'll just spend a few minutes and talk about shuffle array. It's really pretty easy.
Okay.
The main method that you're going to worry about on shuffle array is this get next item. And it's got a few parameters. The first one is the key, which is just some string that's going to be used to store, this is the thing I'm shuffling. I'm shuffling quotes, or I'm shuffling letters, or I'm shuffling whatever it is that you're shuffling. And then you can pass an array of the things that you're going to pick from, and whether you want to reset the counter or not, it defaults to false. Now, it's important to notice that the array that you're passing it isn't actually stored in user storage, because that could be like big, right? There could be like a whole big quotes of lots of text, lots of things. So the array itself is stored someplace else. The thing that's actually stored in user storage is an array of indexes based on the length of the array that you've passed. So behind the scenes, it's using a function from Lodash called range, and you just give it a number. Like if the array length was 10, you would just say range and 10, and it will give you an array that has the numbers 0 through 9.
In a random order.
Well, no, just in range order. And so then that is passed to the shuffle.
And that's shuffled.
Which shuffles it. And then the other thing that I keep track of is what's the actual index that you're currently at in this array of indexes that you're going through. So it's just going to start at 0. And when you say get next item, it's going to use the length of that array to figure out if anything's changed or if it needs to be reshuffled. So for example, if you have an array that has 10 items, and then the next time you call it, the array that you passed it only has 3 items, there could very well be indexes that aren't valid anymore. And so that's an opportunity for it to reshuffle and just, make that smaller. Now, if you passed in an array and it had more things than it previously was, it's just going to go through and finish the items that were in that shuffle array. But then the next time that it shuffles, it will use the whole length again to figure out the reshuffle. So there's kind of some smarts behind the scenes in figuring that out. So that works very similar. And like behind the scenes, what's really happened is calling this other function called get next index, which just has the key, which is the string that like your storage location of what's being stored, and then some number, which is the length of the array. And so all that really happens in that case, if you wanted to use that function instead of the get next item, you would just call that and say, give me the next index, and it will give you the next index. And then you'll use that index in your big main array of whatever it is that you're trying to access. That's kind of how that works. There's a reset. And then all of these tools have a get entry and a set entry that is a TypeScript typed interface that is the, what the data storage looks like behind the scenes. And so behind the scenes, it uses the get entry and set entry to actually pull something out, why that string key, and then it works on that, and then it saves it, sets the entry back, or like a reset.
So this is the object that is stored in the user object.
Yep, exactly.
This is your internal data structure that you're using to manage everything.
Yep, it's storing it in user storage right after the key that you've been passing into everything as the storage location, and then prefixed with the JC tools and the tool name. So yeah. And you can see that at the end, there's a section that talks about what's in the user data store, an example, and reminds you, hey, if you don't have a user data store, it's required, and this is where you can go to figure out in the Jovo documentation on how to set that up.
So it's all pretty straightforward, to be honest.
Yeah. And if you wanted to use the same type of thing and it wasn't Jovo, you can fairly easily look at what it's doing behind the scenes. That's not the data storage part of it. And
gee, what might I do that for?
I wonder. Yeah.
I wonder.
Well, that's all I've got to show on the shuffle array. Did you have any additional questions?
No, actually. I mean, it is pretty straightforward. And like I said, I can easily see how you can, adapt this and take the code to apply it elsewhere. I think the only question I really had, just I wanted to make sure I understood, is that the shuffle array, there's a shuffle array object that has the get next index and all of those methods in it, correct?
Right.
And that object is attached to this $JC tools.
Yeah. So what happens is that for every handler inside of Jovo, the context is this object called the Jovo object. And so it's got a number of $ somethings off of it. That's where your user storage is at $user.data. That's where your session storage is at $session.data. So there's already a mechanism for adding things to that root object because it's passed everywhere. And so the convenience, part of the convenience of the plugin is once you do that, then you automatically now have this $JC tools method. And so you could just be right inside of the handler this $JC tools this, and then pass it some sort of a key and an array, and it worries about the storage. And it's just as easy as you can get. You don't have to worry about the storage behind the scenes. You don't have to worry about newing up an object. It's just right there where you need it inside the handler.
Makes perfect sense. No, so this is pretty cool. I look forward to poking around the code and seeing how I might use some of these tools. So I'll tell you what, why don't we leave it here, and maybe next time we will take a look at the other tool. There's a good one. Other two tools.
Sounds good.
Okay. So love to hear folks' feedback on this. How would you use this sort of thing? Have you tried it and found it useful? I'm sure Mark would love feedback and bug reports and any other suggestions you have on tools for this.
Yeah, I'd love it. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk about it, and come join Jovo community and help out.
So you can leave issues there since it's GitHub. Message Mark and I on LinkedIn or Twitter. Leave comments below, and we'll see you next time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
Have a great week, Mark.
Take care, Alan. Thanks.